500. Are you ready?
Yeah!
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
Now, Ross Kaminsky.
Come on, man.
On Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
Come on, man. Oh, I love that. I love that Joe Biden is always slightly displeased with me. It makes me feel like I'm doing my job well every day, every hour of the show when that thing plays. We are attempting, per the magic of producer Shannon, to be up on YouTube. So hopefully that's working. If you go to youtube.com, type in Ross Kaminsky, and you will see me sitting in the electric chair. No, actually, it's the Kaminsky chair. And, just go to YouTube, type in Ross Kaminsky, and we can see each other. You can pretend that I'm looking at you, too, even though I'm not. Although one day, with the wonders of modern technology, I probably will be looking at you, too. Although I'm not sure I'd want to be because it's 6:07 in the morning and you're probably walking around in your boxers. So for now, this is a one-way viewing opportunity. You viewing me, who I am not walking around in my boxers. I am sitting in the K-House studio. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. We did a lot of honeydew stuff this weekend. My wife worked her butt off in the garden, raking the lawn and raking up twigs, and I went out and helped and did a bunch of stuff too. And my wife just worked so hard, but I said to her, I thought you were really going to get into all this stuff in the spring. And she said, well, it's January, it's late January even. She said it's pre-spring, that's close enough to spring. So we're going to do this now. And of course we have had really warm weather, and yesterday was a beautiful day, cool but beautiful. I think we're supposed to get back into the 50s in the middle of this week. This winter is unbelievable. I guess it's not great for the ski mountains, but I do hope we get a little more moisture. I don't care too much one way or another about the temperature, but I do hope we get more snow, more rain, more stuff, fill up the reservoirs and moisten the land a little bit, because we do have a lot of drought area in the state. Anyway, my weekend was mostly that and watching some football. I did not do very well in my football betting this weekend. I think I won one bet out of 5, but, I'm betting $2 at a time. So it's hard to get too upset. Some good football games yesterday. Tom Brady is just, that dude is, I don't know how you keep doing that at the age of 43. I don't really know how you do it at the age of 23, but especially at the age of 43. He's going back to the Super Bowl, and to have these guys, Mahomes, the Kansas City quarterback, what is he, 25? And Brady's been in the league for 21 years or something like that. So this is probably going to be a very good Super Bowl. Anyway, I hope you had a wonderful, wonderful weekend as well. We got a lot to talk about today and over the whole week, actually. I have a lot of great guests set up for this week, including tomorrow morning. I'll let you know now. Tomorrow morning, we're going to have State Senator Paul Lundeen on the show to give us our first look at this year's legislative session here in Colorado, to talk about what the Democrats are going to do to hurt the people of Colorado even more than they did last year. If that sounds like a very cynical way to describe what the Democrats have done, I admit that it's cynical, but it's also based on experience. Look at all the bad stuff they've done. Anyway, we'll talk with Paul about it tomorrow. And we got a lot of great stuff coming up over the whole week. Kirk Cambier will be back today. He's moving to 7:48 in the morning. That'll be his time for a while. For all those of you who've been asking, where's Kurt? Where's Kurt? He'll be back today. So let's start with some of today's news. One thing that I think Pat Woodard mentioned it. President Biden, and it still makes me gag a little every time I put those two words together, President Biden. I cannot believe Joe Biden's president of the United States, but I need to get out of the habit of saying that every time I say the phrase President Biden, because otherwise I'll just be gagging in my own mouth multiple times every day for 4 years or as long as he's president. So here's the headline from the Wall Street Journal: Biden to sign Buy American order for government procurement. Subhead: order is set to revise the definition of American-made products as the president seeks to boost domestic manufacturing. Now, this is very much a continuation of what President Trump did from the moment he got in office and continued to do throughout his entire time in office, which is to push to get not just American people, but the American government to buy stuff from American companies to make it more difficult. As the Wall Street Journal puts it, the policies will include tightening the procurement rules to make it harder for federal agencies to purchase imported products, revising the definition of American-made products, and raising local content requirements. The executive order also ensures that small and mid-sized businesses will have better access to the information needed to bid for government contracts. Now, this is a great example of a kind of policy that Bastiat would warn us about. The whole idea of that which is seen and that which is not seen. Well, what is seen if you have this kind of thing? What's seen is perhaps more American jobs are created in certain industries where the federal government tends to buy a lot of stuff if they have to buy American and otherwise might not, right? Whether maybe you're talking about metals like steel, if they're building ships or other things. Maybe you're talking about lumber. Maybe, who knows? You can think of all the various things that the federal government might buy. And if they have to buy American, then you would create some more American jobs in those particular areas. But let's talk about what is not seen. All right? What if buying American, let's just pick something, lumber to build buildings, if the federal government's going to do any of that? What if American lumber costs 10% more than Canadian lumber? Right? There's a separate conversation to be had about trade with China, given what an adversary they are. But let's stick with things that are available from lots and lots of other countries besides China. So if the lumber is 10% more, if you don't buy it from Canada, but buy it in the U.S., and if, let's say, a certain kind of steel, just as an example, another example, we could buy that, let's say, much cheaper from Korea than buying it in America, then either, and let's just stick with 10%, although I think the gap in price is typically bigger than that, but let's just stick with 10%. So that would mean that either for the same amount of money the federal government is going to spend doing some stuff, they do 10% less than they otherwise would have done with the same amount of our tax dollars. Right? Whatever amount of steel and lumber and other products that you could buy with $100, if you could buy wherever you wanted to buy it, the federal government can only get what we might think of as $90 worth because we have to buy American and everything's more expensive. Yeah, you're still spending the same $100, but you're getting what you would get by spending $90 if you could buy wherever you wanted. Does that make sense? So the federal government will take our tax dollars and do less with them than they otherwise could under a Buy American order like this, or if they are defining what they need to do just simply based on the project rather than based on the dollars, because they can always just steal more of my kids' future money, then instead of doing something that you could do for $100, it'll cost you $110. I'm rounding, okay? It doesn't, but you get my point. So they'll just have a 10% bigger budget deficit and federal debt based on that part of the federal budget. And nobody wants to talk about this stuff. Now, at least we could have an honest conversation. There might be some people who are willing to say, I'm willing to spend 10% more in order to make sure that Americans get jobs. But remember, what if the federal government has $100 to spend, okay? And they've got this project that they want to do, and if they have to buy American, it'll cost them $100. If they can buy some stuff from overseas, and again, let's put aside China for a minute, from allies, they could spend $90 and have that remaining $10, okay, either just not to spend, that would be best. That would be best, just have the government spend less. But let's say they insist they're going to spend all 100. Well, then they've got, 10%, they've got $10 out of that 100 that they can go spend on something else. And maybe it's not lumber and steel, but maybe it's something else that does create jobs. So it ends up also creating jobs in America, at least partly in America, but just in a different area than these politically favored jobs like steelworkers unions, which all the politicians, Trump and Biden, and so many others all want to owe them a favor and organize their members to donate to them and knock on doors and vote for them. Now, I expect that Joe Biden is so completely clueless about economics and almost everything else that he doesn't understand anything that I just said, even though he should after decades and decades in government. He probably doesn't. And I think he really thinks that this is an unvarnished good thing. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying we need to have an honest conversation about it. On his way out of office, the Trump administration proposed an updated rule to strengthen the original Buy American Act, which is actually from 1933. And part of that involves how much of a thing needs to have been made in America in order for it to count as American made. And I guess with iron and steel right now, with products made for iron and steel, if there's 50% or more of it that comes from America, it counts as American made. The Trump update is aiming to raise that to 95%. Biden might go along with that. And to go to 55% for other products. Now, here's an interesting point. Maybe you can get what's not quite the best of both worlds, but maybe an acceptable situation. If you had an order that said, you will buy American, like for the federal government, you will buy American-made products as long as the quality is at least equal to the imported product and the price of the American product is not more than, I don't know, pick a number, 5% more than the foreign product. I mean, you might even think 10% would be okay. To me, 10% is a massive amount of money when you're talking about spending billions of dollars, and that extra 10%, those hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars or billions by themselves, are just debt piled onto, your kids and your grandkids and all that. But you could theoretically put together a number saying you will buy American as long as the price isn't more than, again, I'll go with 5% more than the foreign product. Personally, I probably still wouldn't do that. I would just buy whatever product is cheapest, all else being equal, right? If the quality is equal. And then if the government spends less money, that's a job creator too. Just having the government steal less is a job creator. So apparently this kind of number does exist. From the Wall Street Journal, Mr. Biden's executive order directs an increase in both the threshold for local contents and the price preferences for domestic goods, the difference in price over which the government can buy a product from a non-U.S. supplier if the price of competing domestic products are deemed excessively high. But it doesn't state specific levels. In other words, whatever the number is now, and this doesn't say, whatever the number is now, where the government can buy a foreign product if the price of the U.S. product is X% higher, Biden wants to raise X so that He's going exactly the opposite direction from what I suggest. He wants to raise X so that the government can be forced to buy made-in-America products that are even more overpriced compared to the foreign products. And again, I get the political dynamic here. I get that you're buying loud and powerful interest groups by forcing people to buy from them. But would you really tolerate it in your own life? Now, I'm not talking about a voluntary transaction. Let's say you go to a store and you see two products. One is made in the U.S. and one is made somewhere else, and the U.S. one costs $1 more. You might voluntarily say, I'm going to buy American and spend that extra dollar. Good for you. Nothing wrong with that. It is voluntary. But what if you were told you could only buy American? You walk into a store and you do see, there's a hammer. There's a hammer you want to buy. There's one that's made in America, and there's one that's made in Mexico. And the one that's made in America is $12, and the one that's made in Mexico is $7. And you think it's just too big a price difference. And you bring the Mexican one up to the cash register now. So sorry, President Biden just implemented an order. You must buy the American one. Well, that's $5 less that you have to, buy food for your family, or buy the screwdriver that you also needed. Now you have to choose between, choose one tool instead of buying both. You would never tolerate that. And you also wouldn't say that buying American is worth it in that situation, because you can easily see the harm to you. Well, this is what President Trump tried to do, and now Joe Biden wants to do even bigger. But instead of a scale of your $12, it's taxpayers' $12 billion or $120 billion or whatever the number might be. So just have this stuff in the back of your mind, the whole Bastiat thing, right? That which is seen and that which is not seen. So we can all understand that 100% of the time on economic policy, there is some secondary effect that a politician did not disclose. And as Bastiat pointed out, almost every economic policy that is implemented with a goal of some claimed immediate good ends up with some long-term, much bigger harm. When we come back, Google had a really cool idea. Dare I say it was a high flyer, but it appears to have come crashing down. I'll explain right after this.
This is Denver's Talk Station with Ross Kaminsky now. Tom Martino at 10, 630 KHOW, Denver. Now, Impact Traffic.